Gervonta Davis is officially a 30-year-old prospect. So we've recently had the announcement of Gervonta Tank Davis's next fight against Lamont Roach to defend his lightweight world title. And is it the fight we've asked for? Not really. And it's honestly given him a lot of backlash from it as well. And although I will be tuning in for it, as we can almost guarantee a devastating knockout from Gervonta Davis's fights.
Y'all know me, I'm dangerous.
It's not necessarily against a fighter we want to see him fight. And look, he's not fooling the fans. No one really wants to see him fight Lamont Roach. And that's just how it feels a lot of the time that Tank fights. Just pointless, meaningless fights that don't really boost his credibility and that people don't really want to see. And Tank's crazy power and boxing skills and how good he is of a fighter is enough for people to tune in. But if we're being honest, the opponents are just not that worthy. And we all know Tank has an amazing record. 30-0, 28 knockouts is ridiculous, of course, we all know that. But there's a real big secret that Tank does to make his record stand out and seem better than it really is. And his team have done a hell of a job promoting him, have built up his value as a fighter and his stock for these huge pay-per-view paydays. But his record really isn't all that impressive as you may think. And we're going to dive into his career and record and debunk a few things. Not to mention he's recently turned 30 years old and is still making prospect fights happen. And in my opinion, he's at a stage in his career where every fight he makes happen should be against a Class A fighter, because let's be honest, we don't know how many years Tank has in him until he retires. I'm not saying he's old by any means, but he's in the second half of his career, if that. So from now on, he should be making fights happen that cement his legacy as a great and a pound for pound star. So first of all, let's dive into his next fight and how this is another perfect example of Tank not fighting anyone relevant or worthy of fighting. Lamont Roach, a fighter with 25 wins, 1 loss, and 10 of his wins coming from knockout. He's a very technical, precise puncher and is very much a boxer. However, he just isn't at that level yet, and I don't think is a worthy opponent for Tank in my opinion. Although a great overall fighter, he has lost to Jamel Herring, and although that was a great back and forth, action-packed fight, how can we expect him to get through Gervonta Davis? Him and Tank have shared a lot of the same opponents, and those opponents Tank has walked through, whereas Lamont Roach has just edged the decision to. So the answer to how does he get through Gervonta Davis is I don't think he can. And yeah, he might do well in the early rounds considering he's a boxer, and Tank does struggle in the early rounds against boxers, but as soon as Tank finds an opening, brings the pressure, I truly believe he will crack Lamont Roach and put him away. And I don't think Lamont Roach has enough power to keep Tank away from him or do any real damage. Not to mention they also fought once in the amateurs, in which Gervonta Davis won that one. However, that's many years ago and we're not really going to base anything off that. The pro game is very, very different, but I guess it's something to build on and promotes the fight a little bit. But look, let's not overlook Lamont Roach, because I'm sure he will give a good fight, but he just isn't what we want to see Tank face. And it could be a great fight, and I'm sure it will be sold to be a great fight, because that's what Tank's promotional team are best at, cherry picking fights. Now angry Tank fans, hear me out for a sec and let me ask you something. When was the last time Tank fought someone that is an A class level fighter that he didn't A, suck them down in weight, or B, give a stupid unfair clause to give himself an advantage? And we all know who I'm talking about, Ryan Garcia, who he clearly took away Garcia's best attributes in that fight of speed and power.
He likes to fight people with no power, so he's trying to weight drain me. Then a rehydration clause, I can't gain more than 10 pounds. There's a lot of stipulations in there that show what kind of character he has, his integrity, and the will of a competitor he has.
By sucking him in weight, and just look how Ryan looked on the night, like a skeleton. Especially comparing it to his last fight against Devin Haney, he looks like a different person. The last time he fought a top A class fighter was probably Jose Pedraza. Not to mention this fight was nearly 8 years ago now. But since then, Tank has not really fought anyone in my opinion that's exactly a top name or could be considered to be on his level. Tank's whole promotional strategy has been to get him a fight against someone he knows he can beat and make it seem like more of an achievement than it really is. Let me explain. For example, with Mario Barrios, they promoted that fight well because Tank went up to 140 pounds to fight him. So the promotion was, oh, can Tank jump up 2 weight classes and beat a world champ to become world champ in multiple weight classes? And that was the selling point of the whole fight, the weight. Because let's be honest, we all knew Tank was better than Barrios as a fighter and as a boxer, but it was sold to be a much much more competitive matchup than it really was going to be. And that's exactly what happened in the fight. Tank finished him, and pretty brutally. Look, I know I sound like a huge Tank hater, but I'm really not. I really like Gervonta Davis, and I think he's one of the most complete fighters in boxing that we have right now. And I've even made a whole video breaking down his entire style and his accolades to establish his distance from his opponent, so he always knows his perfect distance between him and his opponent, so he can fight his fight. The problem with him is he just doesn't make the right fights happen, and now there's no better way to put it than he's a 30-year-old prospect. There are so many huge fights that he could have made happen, including Shakur Stevenson, and there's been back and forth altercations and some discussions of that fight, and we don't really know why the fight hasn't happened, but it's a fight that Tank should be chasing for and pushing for. And that Shakur Stevenson fight, to me, is the most fair, competitive and respectable fight that would happen in the lightweight division for Gervonta Davis anyway. And not to mention Vasily Lomachenko. There was recently discussions of those two having a potential fight earlier on in the year. However, I think Lomachenko pulled out of the discussions because he wants to take the rest of 2024 off. I'm not entirely sure. Could that be him ducking Gervonta? Maybe. But we have to understand that Vasily Lomachenko is way past his prime. He's been beaten by a lot of these fighters and really wouldn't be as much of a credible win as he would have been maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And that's when Tank should have fought him. Tank should have fought him a long time ago, but he never made that fight happen. And I don't think his promoters would have let that fight happen back then. And Tim Bradley said it best. The reason Tank doesn't make these fights happen is because he's been under PBC protective custody for so many years.
Fight Shakur. Oh, he tried to fight Lomachenko at the end, but you was in protective custody. Straight up, PBC protective custody, bro.
And maybe Tank is a great fighter. I'm not saying he isn't, but until he knocks out a top name with no hidden agenda or clauses or any unfair advantages, he cannot be considered a great like people say. And there's people that say he should be in the Hall of Fame already, which I have to disagree with because, like I said, until he proves it by beating a Shakur Stevenson, a Teofimo Lopez, maybe even Ryan Garcia at a fair weight, I just don't think he can be considered an all-time great. I would say Vasily Lomachenko, but I think that's far past this point. Vasily Lomachenko was 36, nearly 37, and I genuinely think he would get hurt by Gervonta Davis. Not to mention his next fight is on pay-per-view, which I personally don't think it should be on pay-per-view at all. And that's not to say Lamont Roach isn't a good fighter, because he is. I just don't think it's pay-per-view worthy. And I know for a fact I won't be paying for it. Someone else can pay for it, but I won't be paying for it. But what do you guys think? Am I being too harsh on Gervonta Davis, or am I right? Also, what do you guys think of his next fight against Lamont Roach? Let us know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload. Anyways, that'll be all. I'll catch you in the next one.